Joining us now on the line, Mike McCormick, the president of Mississippi Farm Bureau. Bureau. Morning, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jared. I appreciate you having me on.
You bet. All right, so we wanted to talk to you, Mike, this morning about some dredging going on in the Mississippi River, I think on the southern section of the river, and how that might impact farmers, in particular soybean farmers.
Well, it'll have a huge impact, Gerard. The channel has degraded some. It's filled in where we could get it dredged from Baton Rouge back to the Gulf would have a huge impact on loading the ocean-going freighters up with grain so they can get back out. At one point, I knew for every foot of grain that you put in one of those ocean-going vessels, how much that meant to the overall load, and it's a tremendous amount. So wow. When we heard about that several years ago, the American Soybean Association asked us to write letters of support. It wouldn't be in Mississippi. It would be from probably from Baton Rouge down, I think, or even a little bit further down from that. But we were certainly, the Farm Bureau was certainly supportive of that. We asked Governor Bryant to support us. He wrote a letter on our behalf at that point in time and got the wheels of motion moving so we can get this project done. It'll be a big win for our soybean farmers.
So, Mike, who's doing the dredging exactly, and how is that authorized?
Well, I can't tell you who's doing it. I'm sure there's private contractors that's doing it through the Corps of Engineers. I know how the dredging process works. It's a little bit different than what the general public might think. What they normally do is they go in the channel and they take some water jets or something to stir the bottom of the river up, and then they pump that up to the sides and hope that the river will take that material down to the Gulf and kind of wash it out. They don't just take dirt from the bottom and put it on top of the levees or put it on the other side. It's a pretty complicated way that they go about doing that.
I see. Well, are there any other farms or crop production that is affected by this besides soybeans? Soybeans is what we were notified about. Are there cotton farmers affected, for example?
Well, I think anything that loaded out on an ocean-going vessel would benefit from having a deeper channel there. But certainly soybeans, the American Soybean Association, and some of the other groups were the ones that were really behind this effort. I would love to say that for all my friends and myself, Gerard, I live down in Jefferson County. That's where I'm at this morning working on my farm. But I'd love to say that it's going to help with some of our flooding issues. But my conversations with the Corps of Engineers says that that's too far down. You got to get up above us to have any impact on that. But certainly any help that we could get to move more water to the Gulf where it's not just sitting here and flooding our farmland in Mississippi would also be a plus if we get any benefit out of that. Yeah.
And speaking of that, Mike, we've talked about that on the program before, but traveling through the Delta, as I did personally, in the June time frame when we were experiencing just record rainfall, gosh, the fields were flooded. It looked pretty dire. What's been the outcome of that?
Well, it pretty much made us have two crops in the North Delta. We had the crops that didn't get flooded that came off on time and produced a really good crop, and those that were flooded out. Some of the farmers looked at their rotation, and they looked at their equipment and their ability to get it back in, and some of them sat it out and just say, I'm not going to try it. But then a good portion of them decided they would go back in and try to get some crop out. The later you put it in the year, the less the yields are going to be, and so they finished one crop, and now they're either beginning to start on the last crop or maybe not even gotten that far yet. So it just made for a long season for our farmers.
I got you. Well, I think that is a testament to their resiliency because I got to tell you, looking through there in June, I'm just thinking the crop is done for this year, honestly. And I wasn't sure. I know we had Hank Burdine on the show a few weeks ago, and he was suggesting the same as you, that they would just try to replant, end up with less yield, but try to salvage, I guess, the season somewhat. But that costs money, obviously, doesn't it, Mike? I mean, to kind of redo.
Lots of money. You've got to go back in and start over and re-prepare the fields, and then you've got chemical cost that's elevated. You have more pest and disease damage the later you get into the summer with all of that. So it's a lot more expense to it. But a lot of people wanted to get another crop in there to be the best stewards that they could to try to be farmers and get their crops out. But they also don't want their crops land to grow up. So we've got all of these weeds that are now becoming Roundup resistant, and they would take over, and you've got to keep those cleaned up anyway, so they don't create a bunch of seed that you have to deal with for the next year. So most of them, I would say a lot of them went back and tried to get something out just for that reason there.
We've got the 2022 legislative session just around the corner. What's on your radar?
Well, I think, right now it's I think our legislative session is lining up to be pretty divisive on some pretty heavy issues. I was hoping that we could get the medical marijuana issue out of the way before we got into session. I don't know how that's going. I haven't talked to anyone, but if that's brought over, they'll have to deal with that first. And then there's some other heavy topics like redistricting and maybe the income tax bill again. So we're going to try to stay out of the way. We may have an important bill or two out there. We've got an issue with the way we need to update our laws on the way we handle grain inspection in the state, and also some regulations to go along with grain that we may have to look at moving into next year. So there'll be plenty up there for us to do.
Yeah. What about at the federal level, Mike? First, is there anything in particular in Biden's domestic agenda that this sausage is being made, as you're probably aware, on his Build Back Better plan, which he hopes to pass through budget reconciliation? Anything in there in particular that might impact the agricultural industry and the farmers?
Well, I think there'll be some good things that come out of it, but the problem is going to be the pay for provisions of how we're going to pay for it and how that'll impact farms in the future. There's a lot of talk early on that there could be some elimination of the stepped-up basis and maybe some inheritance tax elimination, and then all of that was sort of taken off the table. But behind the scenes, you keep hearing that maybe that will reappear at the last minute when all this passes in the end. So we're very fearful of that. Especially the elimination of the stepped-up basis would be really detrimental to a family farm that's been in existence for a long time.
I don't even know how in the world they'd figure out the original valuation, Mike, honestly, on an asset like that that's been around for generations.
My farm's been in my family since the early 1800s, so I don't know at my death how you would value that. I'm not sure how that works. I just know it would get tremendously expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything that you're advocating for? And I know you're in contact constantly with our delegation, House and Senate side, that you're advocating for at the federal level.
Well, we certainly like the infrastructure bill that is being proposed. Any money that we can get for additional infrastructure in the state of Mississippi, as you know, riding around the state, is our roads and bridges are in desperate need of some more funding. So if something does come down the pike and and we are sent some money, we certainly, the Farm Bureau wants to advocate that we don't want to leave our rural roads and bridges out of that conversation, that we continue to advocate for more money for the Emergency Road and Bridge Fund, which has been the main avenue for the last several years to get some state money and even a little bit of federal money last year into that pot so we can continue to work on our infrastructure.
A great deal of the farming industry, the agriculture industry overall, has leveraged digital technologies, and we've got rural broadband being built out across the state of Mississippi by many of the electric power co-ops. Are you seeing that starting to produce some benefits for the farmers? We got just about a minute left, Mike.
Sure, absolutely. Farm Bureau was a big part of getting that bill passed, and we're proud of the electric cooperatives. We got the bill passed with help from a lot of others, but certainly it went over to them to get the projects done. And it's, precision agriculture is the way of the future, and we've got to have connectivity to do that.
Mike, thanks so much for coming on. Always a pleasure talking to you, sir. We'll visit soon.
Thank you. Thanks for calling.